Wild Thing is the tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster in Minnesota. But is it the wildest? Not quite. Located at Valleyfair, this giant Morgan hypercoaster dominates the park's skyline. With its abundance of camelbacks and bunny hills, Wild Thing looks like it should in fact be wild. However, many coaster enthusiasts have nicknamed this coaster as Mild Thing. Is that truly fair, this coaster though? Find out in this review of Wild Thing. After the success of Cedar Point's Magnum XL 200, Cedar Fair wanted to add additional hypercoasters to their other parks. Their second hypercoaster was originally slated for Dorney Park, but permit issues led to the plans being shifted to Valleyfair. Most surprisingly, the coaster wouldn't be built by Aerodynamics. Rather, it would be built by Morgan Manufacturing. Morgan was founded in the 1980s. They got their start building wood coaster trains, track-guided car rides, and flat rides. But in the mid-1990s, they dipped their toes into the coaster market. Two of their first three projects were family coasters. One was Gilroy Gardens' Quicksilver Express. This mine train was designed back in 1995, but not assembled until 2001. Another was the Santa Monica West Coaster Pacific Park in 1996, which has a series of graceful helixes and small drops. But their first coaster to open to the public was Wild Thing, a 207-foot or 63-meter tall hypercoaster. It was a surprising first coaster for Morgan, but the company was able to utilize Steve Okamoto for design, who previously worked at Aerodynamics. Wild Thing runs along Highway 101 and Valleyfair's boundaries. The giant hills define this park's skyline and attract prospective customers. Then the turnaround section is well integrated with the park's Route 76 section as the helixes run overhead. And I really like this coaster's paint scheme too. The bright yellow track and trains both look sleek. This was part of a trio of hypercoasters that Cedar Fair purchased from Morgan in the mid-1990s. After the success of Wild Thing, Dorney Park finally got approval for their own hypercoaster with Steel Force in 1997. Then Worlds of Fun built Mamba in 1998. These three rides have similar layouts and stats. Each ride starts with a giant first drop and large camelback before heading into a large turnaround section. The coaster then returns back to the station with a series of bunny hills. However, Wild Thing has a big difference from the other two. The mid-course trim in Wild Thing hits significantly harder. In my 2019 visit, I was brought almost to a full stop. In my most recent visit, the train had a bit more speed in the return run, but it was still harshly slowed. Compare that to Steel Force that carries way more speed through the second half. And apparently Mamba's mid-course trim has been dialed back in 2022 as well, allowing that coaster to also run faster. It's a shame that Wild Thing isn't allowed to run equally as fast. Those final bunny hills could deliver loads of airtime. So the question is, why does Wild Thing trim so severely? There was an accident in May of 2006 when one of the brake mounts came loose, which caused the final car to partially derail. But accounts from the early 2000s mention the ride was already trimming extensively before this, so this accident didn't seem to be a cause for it. I've heard two reasons why this ride trims. One, maintenance. By using less speed in the return run, Wild Thing puts less wear and tear on the coaster's track and trains. This particularly helps minimize how often this coaster's wheels need to be replaced. Two, and more importantly, the final brake run is short. If Wild Thing runs at its full speed, it can cause damage to the final brake run. There are reports of the ride running trimless at some older enthusiast and employee night events, but this ride hasn't run trimless in several years. When Wild Thing does run untrimmed, the return run supposedly gives powerful ejector airtime rivaling that of Magnum XL 200. I would love to experience Wild Thing under those conditions, and I'm sure the ride would be viewed more favorably in the coaster community if it could run like that regularly. However, it doesn't sound likely to happen anytime soon, even for special events. Now, while this does irk enthusiasts, Wild Thing is incredibly popular for most guests, so the park doesn't need to disable the trims for the ride to please most guests. In my most recent weekday visit, Wild Thing had the longest wait of any coaster. The line hovered around the 40 to 60 minute mark most of the afternoon. Thankfully, each train does hold a lot of people. Each is comprised of 6 cars with guests sitting in 3 rows of 2, which means each train can hold up to 36 riders. In both my visits, Wild Thing has run just 2 trains, I believe the coaster can operate with 3 trains, as I've seen Steel Force do, but it's quite rare to see this happen at Valleyfair. 2 trains should be fine to keep the line moving, but Wild Thing had surprisingly slow dispatches for a Morgan. The restraints are very simple to check, but the culprits were how the load platform was managed. There was a long delay until the entrance gates were opened. It seemed like the crew would wait for the exit platform to be completely clear before opening the gates. Then after the trains were checked, the attendant needed to lock and unlock 3 different loose article bins, which added even more time. I really wish these 2 policies could be revisited because Wild Thing should be even more of a people eater than it currently is. The restraints consist of individual seatbelts and lap bars. Even at the lowest position, most guests will still have a few inches of room. This maximizes any airtime that Wild Thing is able to provide. As for which seat to choose, I have a slight preference for the front on Wild Thing. Not only do you have the added sense of speed, but I think every hill minus the first drop offers better airtime in that car. Once dispatched, you subtly turn out of the station and ascend the lift hill. This lift is extremely loud. It's on par with Steel Vengeance or Twisted Timbers for noise. But if you look off to the left, you get some great views of the entire park. The first drop does what any Morgan drop does. You have a drawn out crest, which causes the train to hang over the edge. The coaster takes its sweet time reaching its max angle of descent of 60 degrees, but that 196 foot or 60 meter tall drop gives good sustained floater airtime. It's just delayed a bit compared to most coasters, but it's great when it finally hits. The second hill is the highlight of the ride for me. This camelback is half the height of the first drop, and it delivers one of the most sustained airtime moments on any coaster. It's not the most powerful airtime in terms of magnitude, as it's decent floater, but it is sustained for 4 to 5 seconds in any row. I wish Wild Thing had more hills like this. You then climb a sizable hill that gives some more floater airtime for those up front. Even those in the back will get a faint pop of airtime cresting this hill. You then twist into the ride's figure 8 turnaround. I like the visuals cruising above Route 76. You navigate an elevated overbank before navigating a low and speedy turn. The latter is one of the few points on the coaster where you truly feel its speed, and it also offers some positive G's as well. You then wind upwards into the brake run, and without fail, you will slow way down. You can hear Wild Thing grinding to a near halt from anywhere within the park. You then drop off the mid-course, but unfortunately you have too little speed to get any airtime here. You then navigate 4 consecutive bunny hills. When the trim hits as hard as it usually does, you get weak floater airtime if you're in the front or back cars. The most notable part of this sequence is the tunnel containing the 3rd bunny hill. I honestly think this is one of the ugliest looking tunnels on any coaster. It's just so awkwardly tall and not the most pleasing to look at, but it is fun having a bunny hill in near total darkness. You then hop into the final brake run, and those up front do get bounced out of their seat one last time. You then come to a loud stop, catching the attention of everyone in the queue line, which ends the 5,460 foot or 1,660 meter long coaster. The final thing I want to note with Wild Thing is the ride's smoothness. The transitions are fluid, but you'll feel these bumps in the track along the course, particularly in the valleys and turns. They aren't painful for me, but they are noticeable and persistent throughout the layout. The other 2 Morgan Hypers in the Cedar Fair chain have similar bumps, but they are less prevalent. So what would I rate Wild Thing? I would give the original Morgan Hyper coaster a 5 out of 10. This is a fun coaster, but this rating reflects how it compares to the other hyper coasters out there. It's one of the weakest hypers out there. I think the layout ultimately is good. The execution is what's flawed. I love Wild Thing's outward leg, but the final 2/3 of the ride just don't wow me. The turnaround section does a lot of meandering, and the final bunny hills have very little airtime due to that mid-course trim. I wish Wild Thing could run its full potential, because it most certainly would be a good ride under those conditions, but it just doesn't seem likely to happen. So those are my thoughts on Wild Thing at Valleyfair. What are your thoughts on this Morgan Hypercoaster? Do you think this ride deserves the nickname Wild Thing? Or do you enjoy this coaster for what it is? If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.